The man simply showed off his close-up lens, completely stunning the Empire's strongest knight. He clearly remembered this man being killed earlier, yet now he stood unharmed before him. However, he didn't know that 2.5 minutes earlier, they had indeed been trapped in his scheme, but at the crucial moment, I activated my vampire bloodline, greatly increasing my strength and winning the battle. But upon arriving at the Clementine lamp, I found him lifeless, which is why Noah stepped forward. Do I possess Vlad's bloodline? Am I a progenitor vampire? He wasn't sure before, but after my awakening during the battle, he was now certain I was the legendary, most noble and highest-ranking progenitor vampire. If that's true, he thought, I can resurrect the dead and make them my servants. Hearing this, I abruptly turned to look at the now-cold Clementine, the skill for creating servants. I had used it on a mercenary leader before. All I had to do was pierce her skin and inject my blood. But her mind couldn't handle it. She went insane. Noah continued, saying that this was true for ordinary people, but not for Clemma. He then said he learned from his master that if someone possessed exceptionally strong mental resilience, receiving the origin blood wouldn't lead to self-destruction. It would also preserve their abilities as a human. The only thing to worry about now was, Clemma was a glorious knight in life. He might attack me because he was forced to become a vampire. Since I'd never revealed my vampire identity to him, I couldn't know his views on vampires. But through our daily interactions, I always presented a sunny and magnanimous image. However, given the current situation, if I wanted to save him, I only had one choice, to ask him personally afterward. Without hesitation, I pierced the skin of his neck with my fangs. The next second, sensing something amiss, my pupils dilated instantly. Now, not only could I not pull my teeth out, but my blood was also being drawn into his skin as if by some unseen force. A moment later, an ancient and obscure incantation began to resonate in my mind. It roughly meant that the servant was the property of the Blood Lord. Under the ritual of writing, the servant's soul would be bound to the master, and all the servant's power would belong to the master. After the incantation was finished, an astonishing energy erupted from Clemma's body, even knocking me back several steps. He regained his footing, and this power showed no sign of weakening after his retreat. Finally, it shot straight into the sky from the ground, leaving a blood-red pillar of light. At the same time, the controlled Minotaur arrived above the surrounding towns, bringing with it many high-level monsters from the labyrinth. The townspeople, seeing monsters escaping from the labyrinth, immediately packed their belongings, trying to leave the town. But how could they possibly keep up with the monsters? They were quickly and mercilessly slaughtered. The city was filled with endless screams and wails of agony. The entire town was now like hell, except for the culprit who had created it all. Wu Getz, a wicked grin on his face, admired his masterpiece. The residents probably never imagined that the Imperial Knight who once swore to protect them was now the murderer tormenting them. He planned to appear just in time to defeat the Minotaur when the village was plunged into despair by its attack. This was his reward for sacrificing himself to the abyss. The contract he received would then surely unleash his power as an indispensable savior in the despair of humanity. Therefore, the more people died now, the deeper their despair would grow. And then, their worship of him would become even stronger. At that moment, a mother and child were fleeing the town when the child slipped and fell. Even though the monster was right behind them, the mother rushed back to help her child up. But this led to them being caught by the monster. Just when the two thought they were doomed, something suddenly flew from afar and struck the monster on the head. The two turned around and saw what appeared to be a knight in red armor. After landing on the monster's head, I gripped its wound tightly and ripped its head in two. Seeing me, Lugiz on the city wall was startled. He couldn't understand why I was there. He had used me as the final sacrifice to awaken the Minotaur, yet I stood unharmed before him. Instantly, he realized I might not be human. Looking at his complex expression, I asked if the Lord knew about the chaos he had caused. But it doesn't matter whether he knows or not, because you're about to die here. Before I finished speaking, Clemma appeared behind him. A BG, burning gear, slammed down, shattering the city wall where he stood. As the first knight in the territory, Redice reacted quickly, seemingly watching a soap opera. Clema chuckled and said, "He's back." I handed Redice over to Clema and turned to find the Minotaur. As the giant creature attacked, it immediately swung its claws. Seeing this, I ducked and dodged. Then, regaining my balance, I lunged forward, conjuring a red orb in my hand. The Minotaur staggered several steps after being struck, nearly falling. The townspeople shouted, "Look! Someone's fighting a monster." It looked like a red-eyed knight in red armor. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was me. This sight rekindled their hope. Even the followers of Redice were moved. They say I'm the savior, that he's descended from heaven to save us. Those prophecies are all true. While people discussed this, the Minotaur had already taken 7 or 8 of my attacks, finally collapsing to the ground with a powerful blow, lifeless. The residents erupted in cheers for me. With the Minotaur's death, the runes on Redice's hand, which had been drawing power from it, began to dissipate, and he plummeted from the sky. Seeing the situation was dire, the other believers scattered and fled. But the defiant Redice got up and drew his long sword again, charging forward. This time, however, he was easily caught by Clema. When Clema snatched the sword from him so easily, he was somewhat bewildered. He realized that compared to before, this guy's strength had suddenly weakened, and Gates was even more confused. In his memory, Clema was strong, but not this strong. Indeed, I arrived here after dealing with the monster. Seeing me arrive, Clema first called me Director Shang, then asked if I could handle Redice. I said I would handle him, and I said no problem, but don't forget to kill them all, leave no one alive. Hearing this, Redice on the ground was so frightened he almost wet his diaper. Without hesitation, he quickly stood up and ran. Clema laughed and followed closely behind. He ran, he chased, he couldn't escape. Redice ran out, but before he had even reached 10 meters, Clema blocked his way. After the incident, news of Redice's atrocities quickly spread to every corner of the territory, and I naturally became a hero of this land. Wherever I went, petals would flutter and cheers would erupt. But I didn't care about any of that. What truly mattered to me was rescuing my only companion, Clement. Since Clement was now a vampire like me, he could naturally see Miriam's presence. I briefly introduced him to him. He was a water spirit named Miriam. Seeing my simplistic introduction, Miriam immediately flew out and solemnly declared to Clement and Cyranoa that he was my guardian contractor. Therefore, naturally, he was the boss and both of them should obey him from now on. Hearing this, I grabbed him and said, "This guy may seem to only spew water and is quite annoying, but he has his uses." Then I told Clement, "Since you have become my servant, you can only drink the blood of animals or monsters from now on. Currently, I only need it once or twice a month, but I'm not sure about you." Clema looked at his claws and asked if he would never be able to see sunlight again. Million flew out and said, "Of course, unless you want to be roasted to a crisp." Clema, skeptical, immediately turned and ran out to try it, but what happened next astonished both Million and me. When Clema was exposed to sunlight, nothing happened. Seeing this, I exclaimed, "How is this possible? What vampire isn't afraid of sunlight?" The nearby Sylvanus explained that only ordinary vampires fear sunlight, while the progenitor vampires are the noblest. Vampires are beings standing at the pinnacle, ruling over everything, so walking in sunlight is no problem for them. It seems I've shared this trait with my servant. Hearing this, I got up and walked into the sunlight, then removed the cover of the dark forest, exposing my skin to the air to see if I was really all right. I was dumbfounded. Had all my previous efforts to avoid the sun been a joke? Clema then put his arm around my shoulder and started teasing me. I had previously told him I had elven blood, and I always wore a big hat when we walked in the street, even during our duel. But now he had finally fulfilled one of his wishes, to fight alongside me from now on. However, when he tried to call my name, he couldn't utter a sound. I turned to him, puzzled, and asked if he was stuttering. Seeing this, Noah stepped forward and explained that since he was my servant, he couldn't address my soul directly. From now on, he could only respectfully call me master. Clemma complained, "What kind of talk is this? We are brothers in arms, our dearest friends and family, and now we can't even call each other by name." Looking at him reminded me of when I helped resurrect Ma in the labyrinth. I told him that from now on he was no longer human, but this was the best choice to save him. From now on, his life would be filled with many restrictions and threats. If he felt betrayed, he could choose not to follow me. Hearing this, Clem smiled slightly and said that what I said was a bit hurtful. Then he stood up and said that whether he was human or not was irrelevant. "The important thing is that I like you very much, and now my life is saved by you. I am very grateful, and from now on, I will follow in your footsteps for the rest of my life." Thinking of this, a slight smile curved my lips. After playing around in the river west for a while, Clem suddenly remembered something and called me master, asking where Patrick and RA had moved to. I said that I had given them a secret mission and didn't know how it was going.